Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our free webinars every Saturday. Now, this month it's very different. If last month our topic is more on the role of HR in the pandemic, right now our topic is more on the role of technology and how HR can use it as they face the pandemic. So more on technological trends, more on platforms and tools, online tools that we can use in order to help us be better HR, especially during this situation. I am happy to see that a lot of our usual viewers are here right now at napaka-exciting po ng hapon na ito ngayon kasi for the first time in our history, we have two speakers instead of one, and this two people are very close to my heart because they've been very active in helping Uprush. They've been very active in supporting me when it comes to my speaking engagements. I've worked with them in the past, and they are also partners of Uprush. So napaka-exciting po ng hapon na to, na sobrang excited ako sa topic natin at sa speakers natin for this afternoon. But before we introduce them to you, let me just go through a few things, okay? So let me just invite everyone to our HR Bootcamp, Batch 13. This is happening on October 16 and 17. If you're interested in becoming part of this webinar, you can you can scan the QR code splashed on your screen right now, or you can head to the link indicated in the screen right now. We have also indicated that link in our comment section. So pwede nyo po siya i-check sa comment section, click nyo lang po siya doon. Or if you're watching anywhere else outside of Uprush Facebook page and outside of our Facebook group, you can actually head to our Facebook page. Under the events tab, nandun po lahat ng aming mga events for the whole month of September. We are still building the ones that we have for October, but the whole month of September nakalagay na po doon ng aming mga webinars, both free and paid. Kung walang budget, walang problema. Every Saturday po, free po ang ating webinar from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. All of the topics are posted there. It's also in our cover page, cover picture or cover photo in our Facebook page. So makikita nyo po lahat doon. Okay po? If ever you're having problems with connection, wag din po tayo mag-alala. As long as you have requested for a certificate, which we'll discuss later, as long as you have filled out the form needed for the request for certificate, a copy of the video and the slides will actually be given to you. So hindi po problema ang internet connection. Everyone will be able to learn regardless whether you have stable or not so stable internet connection. Ayan po. If ever you would also like to be our sponsor and co-organizer, we have sponsorship packages. Just let us know which ones you're interested in. We can have you tagged as our event co-organizer or our event sponsor for a minimal fee. If you're interested po, just send us an email at support@readyrightnow.com. Ayan po. And then just a few CSR services po. Like what we've done in the past, we would like to knock on your hearts. One of my close friends, yung anak po niya is suffering from acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He was diagnosed last June 10, 2020. If you would like to help, I'm flashing right now the BPI, Metrobank, and PNB account numbers where you can send your donation. You can also help by sending donations via GCash and PayMaya. Or if you would like to provide moral support, kahit ano lang po, kahit text nyo lang po si Dr. Philip Richard Budyongan para at least naman po masuportahan nyo po siya and yung kanya pong anak during these trying times. His son, Andre, is dreaming of becoming a pilot one day. His father is actually a flight attendant. And Andre has always been the source of inspiration and pure bliss of his family. So if you would like to support po, andyan po yung mga numbers where you can send your help. Of course, we would also like to knock on your hearts for one of our regular panelists, Miss Monica Nalda. We actually did a free concert last September 1. The video is still posted in our Facebook page. If na-miss nyo po yan, you can still watch. I'm flashing right now here the GCash and the BPI number where you can send for your support. If you cannot send any financial support, kahit po moral support po, text nyo lang po si Nika para at least alam naman po niya na may mga sumusuporta sa kanya. Unfortunately po, when we started this call for help, it was for her father's hospitalization bills. Unfortunately, her father passed away due to COVID. So the support that we need right now is to settle the hospitalization bills and to help both Nika and her brother work on the papers and all the other expenses that they have incurred because of her father's passing away. Okay po? So yan, before I go ahead and introduce our speakers for the day, let me just show you the video of one of our co-organizers right now, Social Geekers. They are actually the internet marketing arm of Uprush. So let's watch. Ayan po, nagpapasalamat po tayo sa ating mga co-organizers, sponsors, and partners for this. So, ayan. Good afternoon po sa lahat ng mga nanonood na right now. Good afternoon po sa lahat ng mga nagme-message. Good afternoon po. You can use the comment section for your questions later or for any comments that you might have. Good afternoon, good afternoon. Indicate where you're coming from para alam po natin kung saan po nanggagaling ang ating mga viewers. I would guarantee you na napakaganda po ng ating discussion this afternoon. So let me introduce, without further ado, let me introduce our speakers for today. Our first speaker is actually, this is more of a career handling the biggest recruitment portal in Vietnam before founding four, not just one, but four tech startups in Southeast Asia and later invested in over a dozen other early stage startups. He initially planned to semi-retire in his late 20s until he found a renewed passion in helping improve the well-being and experience of people in the workplace. This newfound inspiration paved the way for him creating Up Technologies, a group of tech products and services that aim to utilize innovation and technology in helping organizations create a more conducive working environment and ultimately help people experience work better. Yeah. Pride of Masbate, if I remember correctly. Ayan po. That is Mr. Paul Espinas. And of course, a good friend of ours also, I would like to introduce Mr. Jamie Duncan. Jamie is the head of learning and development at Up Technologies and is currently managing the Move Up, a new micro-learning platform that is revolutionizing the workplace learning environment. The ultimate goal of Move Up is to improve employee well-being and empowering people to perform better with the use of technology and innovation. Jamie is a graduate of the University of Glasgow, Scotland, and holds a Master of Science by Research in Biomedical Sciences. From the outset of his career, his passion has been to improve people's well-being. This has led to a variety of experience from working as a research scientist in the life science industry to his later work in the education sector in Vietnam. So napaka-apt po ng ating dalawang speakers right now for the topic that we have. Without further ado, let me share the platform, the floor right now with both Paul and Jamie. Hello, good afternoon. How are you both?
Good afternoon, Ms. Rona. I'm very nervous right now. Xin chào from Vietnam, by the way. I'm in Ho Chi Minh City right now.
Yes, and Jamie's also in Ho Chi Minh, if I remember correctly. Right, both of you are.
Thank you so much for the fantastic introduction. Magandang hapon to everyone watching from the Philippines. I'm really excited to be here today. Thank you, Ms. Rona.
Okay, so I would be removing myself from here, and I would let the two of you share your presentation. Okay, so take it away, guys.
All right. Okay, so magandang hapon po sa lahat ng nanonood sa Philippines. It feels so good to speak in Filipino. I left the Philippines over 12 years ago, and I've been dreaming of really providing value into the market. In the last 2 years, we've been very active in the Philippines, and I'm very excited and equally nervous today for this talk. First and foremost, I would like to thank Ms. Rona for having us here today. What you're doing with Apprash, this webinars are very, very important, I think, in pushing forward not only the HR industry, but really the mindset of the business industry in the Philippines. And I'm also very happy that this month your theme is you're focusing really the importance of technology in our processes these days. So again, thank you very much and congratulations in advance. I just checked our social media page. We have over 250 people simultaneously watching right now. So an advance congratulations to you. And please allow me to also say, maayo po na hapon dito sa tanan nagakita sa Masbate. I know my mom is always telling everybody to, like, you know what, he's going live. Watch this webinar, watch this webinar. I hope you're all doing well in your homes. And thank you for deciding to spend your Saturday afternoon with us today. I hope you find something valuable in this presentation. All right. So first up, I just wanted to know, how are you right now? In one word, how do you feel right now? Can you please post that on the comment section on whichever platform you're watching from, either your Facebook pages or your social media pages? How do you feel right now? How are you? In one word. All right. Okay. I always start my presentations like this because number one, I'm nervous. And my mom always told me, like, you know what, you're nervous when you're speaking in public, and not because you don't know what you're talking about, but because you care. And I am nervous right now because I hope the next couple of minutes will be valuable for you and it will be worth your time, right? But I think it's also important that asking how your friends are, how even your partners or your kids are on a daily basis is very important, especially in the times that we're going through right now. So I hope you're all safe and comfortable in your wherever you're watching from, right? Okay. And also, one thing that I changed in the way I present in the last couple of months is, instead of setting up an agenda, I'm listing down questions that probably you guys are asking right now. Probably wondering, who are you? What do you do? Why are you talking about performance management, right? Or probably, why do we need a new way of performance management? And for those who are a little bit more action oriented, they're going to be like, okay, so what can we do now? All right. And for those future planners, you'll be like, okay, so when this is all over, what can we do, right? Or is there anything done anywhere in the world, probably here in Vietnam, that you should know about as someone in HR or someone who's looking into performance management? And as Ms. Rona mentioned earlier, you will get a copy of this webinar. And I think the most important is, part of the presentation is if there are any prizes. So I would like to call on my teammate, Jamie, to tell you more a little bit about the prizes for today.
Sure. It's a great job to have, Paul. All right. So we have a couple of prizes today. A prize that really is suited to HR, which is the use of our app, Move Up, for your company, for up to 20 users for 1 year. This has a value of $1,000.
All right,
Wow.
that's dollars, Jamie, right? Not pesos.
Yeah, US dollars.
All right.
If that's not enough, we have not won. We actually have two prizes for you today. Our second prize is a $500 worth, again, US dollars, of our premium masterclass in Move Up. All right. So we're partnering with trainers and coaches to film really high quality training content with our production team here in Ho Chi Minh City. So,
yes, we're running a bit of like a Bollywood here. We have our own production team and we're producing high quality master classes on productivity, navigating, work from home, and so on. All right. Jamie, why don't you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
And how they can contact you to win the prizes?
Yeah, we also have a great one on productivity tips for parents. which is fantastic. All right. So, as I said, my name is Jamie. Miss Rona gave me a pretty great introduction. So my background is life science and research, and then I came into learning development and about technologies. Um, Here's my contact information. You can contact me, jamie@upapap.asia, or you also have my WhatsApp, Viber number there. If you'd like to discuss a little bit more about your L&D program, or also to claim your prize later. Thank you, Paul.
All right. So we'll have you a little bit later in the presentation, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So they're probably wondering now, who am I? Ms. Rona did a very kind introduction. The introduction is really focusing on me being a marketer. So I started my career as a digital marketing person here in Vietnam, and I've handled the recruitment portal here in Vietnam. We started at 1 million users, and then we grew it to 8 million users. These are people who are looking for jobs, companies who are posting job posts and looking for talents in Vietnam. I never got a chance to work in the Philippines, unfortunately, but I have businesses running right now in the Philippines. I'm originally from the beautiful island of Masbate. If you don't know where that is, that's in Region 5 in Bicol region. And I'm an avid traveler. I've been in over 50 countries. Most of the time I travel alone, but I also take the opportunity to meet interesting people in marketing and recently in HR and HR technology in the last 2.5 years as part of our investment for Up Technologies. This is important that you know a person. I specifically highlighted this for because I feel like our topic today starts with knowing vividly who we're working with, from the CEOs, the business owners, to the managers, to the team members. I think we are moving towards a very personalized realm of performance management, and we're going to explain that later on how that works and why that's important in adjusting our performance management systems based on the individual or the teams. All right. So in the company, we are a tech company, actually. We develop platforms, apps. We use technology and innovation in creating apps, websites to improve your experiences at work. Our first product was actually on performance management for remote work setup. So the last 2.5 years, we've won competitions in Europe, Turkey, Thailand, South Korea, here in Vietnam, Singapore. But that was the PR side of it. What people didn't know was there were a lot of no's. A lot of big companies took the app, but the small and medium enterprises were asking us, why do we even need a performance management platform for remote work? And then we've been telling them and justifying that, you know what, data shows that in the next 5-10 years, people are going to start working remotely. And then COVID happened. That was expedited. So we empathize on what businesses and HR teams are going through right now, because a new way of setup is a new way of management and a new way of doing business. So hopefully today, the techniques we're going to share with you will be valuable on how you're going to add a little bit here, change a little bit here on your performance management systems that are relevant to the times that we're going through right now. All right. So I think the first question I would like to ask is, how many of you here consider yourself an optimist? Can you type number 1 on the comment section if you think you're an optimist? I'm watching here on the live stream. Right. Personally, I am an optimist. I love thinking that things are going to be fine anyway. So when I go back to Masbate and I'm on a holiday, or I'm in Peru in Latin America, I like to dream. I like to be an optimist and think that when I go back to work, things are going to be fine anyway. Or I want to do this. I want to be able to build this in the next 3 years, 5 years, right? So that's my being optimist side. How many of you here think you have a positive mindset? If you think you have a positive mindset, type 2 on the comment section. Right? Okay, so I'm seeing some responses now, right? So we have some optimists, and we also have some positive thinkers, people who have positive mindset, right? Let me just clarify a little bit the difference between the two. And I think this is very important on a personal level and also on how we develop our performance management systems. I'll explain in a bit why. Optimism is basically believing good things, events will happen in your future, regardless of your present situation. So you disregard, you don't put into consideration the things that are happening in reality right now. A positive mindset, on the other side, is based on awareness and acceptance of the current situation and having a workable plan towards a better quality. Let me just reiterate that a workable game plan and the awareness and acceptance of the current situation. Optimism is great, but I highly recommend people to have more of a positive mindset right now. Sit down, know what's happening, and accept that things are happening. Now, with that, what's your workable game plan? It could be on a personal level, it could be on a team level, it could be on your performance management system. You're probably wondering now, why are you talking about a mindset before talking about performance management systems, right? I feel like now is the opportunity for us to reinvent a section in a workplace that I dreaded when I was younger. I moved in Vietnam when I was 22, and I was automatically positioned to become a digital marketing manager because that was my expertise. And 8 years ago, digital marketing skill sets was very scarce, especially in Vietnam. Search engine optimization, search engine marketing was very scarce talent. And they positioned me into a leadership role to grow this HR technology platform in Vietnam. And I remember vividly how nervous I was because, of course, you're 22 years old, you're in the middle of Ho Chi Minh City, which is previously known as Saigon, walking in a small room with the CEO, who's basically one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Vietnam. His name is Jonah Levy. He's amazing. He's one of the people that I really look into. But that moment, every 6 months and every year, where you walk in that little room and just no matter how you say it, what the purpose, it's just nerve wracking. It's just terrifying. It's like you're walking in there to get judged. And I told them after my first performance appraisal, I will not do this with my team. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to share with you later on how we did that. Right. So I think just going back to this moment on why it's important to have a positive mindset. I understand my family are in the Philippines. I understand it's very difficult in the Philippines and anywhere in the world right now. Know what's happening, accept that it's happening, but this is an opportunity for us to plan and to really change something, hopefully for the better. This next photo, I guess, is an amazing representation of what we're going through right now. It's dark, it's gloomy, but this is an opportunity for us to metamorphosize. That's the process that larva is going through to become a butterfly, right? And this is what we envision right now. Hopefully, probably it's a great step that you're already attending webinars like this because you're part of the conversation on how we can actually make things better at work. Most especially on processes and systems that adds pressure to people, right? And in most cases, unnecessary stress. Stress for me is okay, but if it's an unnecessary stress, we have to get rid of that. I'm a history geek, so I want to walk through with you how did all these performance management systems came about. So let's watch this video very quickly.
Performance management is an idea that is both very new and very, very old. For as long as there have been employees, there's been some kind of employee oversight process. But how did today's ideas about performance management come to be? Let's go back in time to take a look. Some historians trace the beginnings of modern performance appraisals all the way back to China in the 3rd century, when the imperial rater had the job of evaluating the performance of ruling family members. He was not popular. In the late 19th century, Scottish cotton mill owner Robert Owen is said to have created a system to assign a degree of merit to workers based on their productivity. But it wasn't until the 20th century that things really got going. By the mid-1950s, companies were using a performance appraisal process that was largely based on the personality of the employee. There was no room for self-appraisal, no transparency, and many of the things employees were evaluated on were not things they could change or develop. Not surprisingly, this process was not well liked.
All right. So a little bit what was said there. English is probably my second language. So I learned Masbateño. And in Masbate, we are a mixture of Ilonggo, Bisaya, Bicolano. And then we learn English even before we learn Filipino. So every time, it became a habit that every time I learn something new or I watch something, I'd take note the keywords that was said and then reflect on them. This also helped me learn Vietnamese. So that's why I can handle conversations in Vietnamese using this technique I called word banking, right? So on that video we just watched, which is the very, very early stage of performance management systems, it started in Mother China. And some of the keywords there that what this was mentioned was evaluating performance. Personality based. So if Catriona Gray was born in the 20s, she'd be one of the top employees because it's based on personality. There was no opportunity for you to review your performance. There's no self-appraisal, and there's no transparency. We don't know what's the result. We don't know what they're evaluating and so on. And most importantly, the results of the performance management are non-actionable, meaning whatever the results that was just made for evaluating purposes. I can't do anything with the result. But we improved. What's the next stage in the 50s or 60s? Let's watch this.
Things evolved in the 1960s when MBOs, or management by objectives, took over. MBOs brought employees into the process through self-appraisal and collective goal setting, through transparency and the focus on measurable objectives. They created space for performance to actually be measured. The glory days didn't last too long, though. The 1970s brought widespread criticism and even lawsuits against views were too subjective, often leaving careers in the hands of managers whose personal opinions could overshadow what was best for the company. And then the 1980s happened. Enter annual performance reviews and GE CEO Jack Welch's infamous rank and yank system, officially called stack ranking. In this system, employees are evaluated yearly, often with a check-the-box questionnaire. Managers then assign 20% of their employees the top ranking of 1, the middle 70% a value of 2, and the bottom 10% the lowly value of 3. While it does incorporate goal setting, evaluation, and some self-appraisals, stack ranking's somewhat arbitrary value assignments have been criticized for creating cutthroat cultures and rampant favoritism. Recent research has also shown that stack ranking simply doesn't make sense because talent development doesn't happen on a bell curve.
All right. So some of the keywords we got from that video is management by objectives. So this era in the 60s was when objectives was born. The things that they used to evaluate employees became measurable, which is a huge milestone coming from the previous era, right? Self-appraisal was there, and the infamous stack ranking. No offense, if you're still doing stack ranking and it works for your organization, I'm not saying change it, keep it. Whatever works for your organization, keep them, but just find ways to improve them over time, sooner if not later, right? And of course, my not so favorite yearly check the box approach. I really don't use this in any of my companies that I built or that I invest on. I make sure that this goes straight to the box. And in this approach, there's still so much about personal opinion over really something that we can measure. And of course, really, it doesn't align with the company's interests. But the glory days are now. Let's watch this on what's in those glory days.
Last 2 decades, performance management has come of age. Increasingly, companies are recognizing the need to use reviews as a way to actually drive performance rather than simply evaluate it. Feedback is happening more often, quarterly, monthly, or even weekly, and is less time consuming for managers thanks to technological innovations. 360-degree feedback, which includes self-appraisals as well as feedback from peers and managers, is increasingly common. Whole teams are being evaluated together rather than as individuals. And the innovations keep coming, it seems, almost every day.
Right. So innovation comes every day. By the way, our social media is exploding. We have 558 comments as of now. I'm trying to get some inputs from you guys who are watching on our social media, and it's going crazy. 558 comments. I can't keep up. Um, so on that video that we just watched on where is performance management now in the last 2 decades, some keywords there is improve performance. Finally, we create performance management systems that will help employees improve their performance, right? It's less time consuming for HR. Imagine you have, as HR professionals, you don't invest so much time going through the traditional performance management systems. You have feedback loops, top down, bottom up, peer to peer. We'll give you some examples on how we've done that with companies that we work with. Peer feedback, which is so powerful. Sometimes, you know what, the best person to give you feedback and to mentor you not necessarily is your direct line manager, but is your teammate, because you're on the ground. That's one of the reasons also that why I invited Jamie, because he knows better on the application side how we actually help companies transition to a new way of performance management systems, right? And of course, team evaluation. This is a new approach. Like, you don't get evaluated individually. On top of that, there's a team focus group evaluation, which is so powerful when people feel confident to share their thoughts on the team appraisal and how they see the performance of their teammates and so on. All right. So how does this translate to you and your company? In marketing, we have a concept of what's in it for me. Anything you launch, any branding you launch, any banner you publish, any social media post you post, there's always has to be what's in it for me, for the viewer. Right. So this, you're probably wondering now, okay, we went through the history of performance management. We identified some key points here and there. What's in it for me and for my company, right? The first thing I think as a form of exercise is to ask yourself on if you're an HR manager or if you're the person who's directly in charge on your performance management systems in the company, first and foremost, ask, why do you conduct performance appraisals in the company? All right. Sad to say, companies that we work with had performance management systems for the sake of conducting them because it's part of the process. Right? There's really no deep understanding or a deep motivation on why are we doing performance management? Or why are we stressing out our office mates? Or why are we forcing team managers to stress out their team members? Really, for me, performance management before was so stressful. That's how I remember it. So I guess as HR managers, as team leaders, why do we conduct performance appraisals? We always have to remember that to be able to answer that as HR managers, we need to identify the 4 types of people in the office that we work with. This is part of our pillars in the company. Whatever apps, website, or platforms we create for the client, we always remember that technology or systems and processes in the organization is addressing 4 different stakeholders in the company. You have your CEOs or business owners like myself. The end of the day, our priority and our main pain points are profit, return on investment. What's the return on investment on this performance management initiative that we're conducting, right? Are these processes that we have right now cost effective, etc.? That you can add on your report on your performance management initiative. Is it cost effective? What's the return on investment? How does this ultimately contribute to the profit of the company if you're talking to the CEO or the business owners? For HR managers or for your HR team, your priorities are a little bit different. You're focused on employee well-being. Your focus is on employer branding to make it feel like your company is the best place to work for. And sometimes you use these contents as a part of your recruitment initiative, right? For your team leaders and team members, these two sets of stakeholders are completely different. So when you answer, why do we conduct performance appraisals for team leaders and for team members, the reasoning are very different, right? So for team leaders, they're focused on team performance, training their team, and of course, for them to get promoted and get higher in the corporate ladder. For team members, however, and for those who are just starting out their career, performance management should reflect their priorities. Their priorities is on learning, achieving their target. How can you reviewing my performance help me achieve my target? And ultimately, for a lot of team members, especially for those who just came in the workforce in the last 5-7 years, it's really to have some sort of financial freedom, right? For us, we have this statement that we made 2.5 years ago when I decided to build up technologies. We let me read this one. We do performance management to ensure that the experiences with us, but with our employees, is conducive for them to do their respective jobs at their best. And while doing so, they grow and they become better fathers, mothers, individuals. Later on, Jamie is going to give you examples on how we infuse performance management systems on the business perspective. But for those who are watching, especially if you're a CEO, if you're an HR manager, or if you're a business owner and investor, it's very important that your performance management system should also reflect how it will impact the individuals that work in our organizations. A lot of time on a day-to-day basis are spent by these people to grow our companies. And the least we can do is to acknowledge that we are partly responsible on making them better individuals, beyond just making sure that they do their job properly, right? So after asking why, you can do the 5 whys approach. Why are we conducting performance appraisal? Then the reason, and then you ask again why and why and why. You'll be able to understand and to really launch a program. Remember, in our concept, performance management is not a system for us. It's really a program. It's a part of our HR program. This next step for us is to identify what doesn't work and what needs improvement. We don't recommend to revamp how you do things. If you're doing the stack ranking, keep them, change a little bit here and there, and slowly transition. And to be able to do that, you need to identify what doesn't work and what needs improvement. We have a long list of what doesn't work and what needs improvement on our existing performance management systems in most companies around the world. But here are 6 of very powerful things to improve by McKinsey and Company. The article's title, by the way, you can go to McKinsey and Company's website, and the title of the article says, Performance Management, Why Keeping Score is So Important and So Hard. These are the 6 things that they identified that goes wrong with existing performance management systems, right? Number 1, wrong metrics. One of my favorite books, as you can see, I have a lot of books in my workroom at home. One of my favorite books is Measure What Matters. Wrong metrics means you're assigning a person a target that they don't resonate to, or that doesn't have an impact to the team or to the business at large, right? Poor targets. What are poor targets? This is something that I learned from my mentor. Asians, our culture, when we don't hit the target, that's embarrassing, right? In the West, I don't know in Scotland, Jamie, if this is true, but in the West, if they don't hit the target, it's an opportunity to discuss on how to do things better. So how does this reflect on our performance management and goal setting, right? Poor targets means Asians have the tendency to set the target a little lower because it's innate to us in our understanding that it is embarrassing not to hit the targets, right? So these are some things that are very powerful to understand when setting targets. That's why I introduced myself on 4 different pillars and highlighting that knowing the persons that you are reviewing is very, very important. Again, there's lack of transparency, lack of dialogue, probably lack of dialogue that it doesn't entirely exist, or lack of frequent dialogue. It's not as often as it should be. All right. And then lack of consequences. I'll tell you an approach later on how you shift consequences into, instead of pressuring a person or punishing a person, you use that consequence as an empowerment tool. And then lastly, there's a lack of management engagement. Senior management or the department heads are not involved in really looking into the results of the performance management appraisals. So compared to our word bank earlier, remember we watched, the history of performance management and so on. What do you observe with those keywords and these problems that we have right now? Let me just check very quickly what's on our social media. Right? So I always compare what words we found out on our word bank and these existing problems right now on our performance management systems. If you can observe, we are still facing the same problems since the conception of the modern day performance management in the 1950s, in the 1960s. We have the same problem in 2020. What does that tell us? We need to do something about it. HR, business owners, we need to do something about it. How we're going to do that? We identified 6 problems earlier, according to McKinsey and Company. Wrong metrics, poor target, lack of transparency, lack of dialogue, lack of consequences, lack of management engagement. All you have to do is to start is just flip this, right? And to help us understand that, we know in the company that there are 2 types of audience. You have the thinkers, people who likes to have the data and then the conversation on what can be done and so on. But we also have people who are doers. Like, what are we going to do next then? So here to help me to explain to you some actual examples in our mantra in Up Technologies is Mr. Jamie Duncan. Jamie?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Paul. So yeah, as Paul mentioned, I'm heading learning development at Up Technologies, and so 2.5 years ago, when we started creating these apps for performance management, it was kind of almost, to use the word, weird, right? Basically, people didn't see the value of managing employees and performance remotely, right? And what happens 2.5 years later, and now in pandemic times, what we have predicted has now essentially come to fruition. And so we created this model, the 6A model, to really help companies to adapt to the, let's say, the new normal in performance management, if you will. So I'll take you through each of these in turn. So let's start off with the first A, which is assess. Basically, where is your organization at? All right. In here, you need to engage with your stakeholders. Right. Find out what are the specific needs of your stakeholders. Paul touched on this already, talking about your CEO, your HR manager, your team leaders, your team members. What are their needs? All right. After you have the needs, you then move on to the second A, which is assign. Right. And this again is what addresses one of the major problems in all performance management, which is targets that are not relevant to the employee. All right. So assign targets that are relevant to your employee. We recommend OKRs, but this can be any target. This can be KPIs, or you can just call them targets, right? And then the next step is to align. All right. So if you're familiar with the OKR framework, all the targets should be aligned between team members, between the team member and team leader and the HR manager, and the director and everyone with the company vision, right? You need to explain to your stakeholders about your targets, right? And then we go into apply, right? Actually putting this framework into action. And we don't normally recommend that you roll out this a new employee performance method across the entire company once, right? What we recommend is that you get a cohort, right? Get a cohort of your company and then apply only to that cohort, and they will become your champions. So then it doesn't feel, when you roll out new performance management, that it comes from the top, because the original cohort, they will be your champions, right? And if you have a smaller company, it is okay also to roll this out across the entire company. But generally, start first with a cohort. And next A is appreciate. Right? In your performance management system, do not focus on negatives and penalties. Right? What you want to do is have some way for you to show your appreciation to your team members, to your managers, right? Make sure there is an avenue to recognize them, not at the end of the year, right? Paul talked about end of year appraisals. Appreciation on your employee performance must be done in real time, right? And lastly is achieve, right? You need to measure the achievement in some way, and not just the immediate results. This needs to be a continuous process, right? Also on the midterm results, in the long-term results, right? And this is obviously done in partnership with your learning development teams, in partnership with your compensation and benefits teams. So next, I'd like to show you a diagram to illustrate a little bit better, exactly how can you implement some effective performance management strategies. And I'll touch on each part in turn, right? So going to the leftmost side, we'll start with OKRs. These are these arrows in black. So these are going to be your targets. And it's what is really important here is that target of, say, the accountant at the bottom resonates with the director of, or the next manager, and then his manager, and then his manager, and everything with the company vision. Right. And what we've done here is that you also have these light bulbs here. This represents learning. Okay. Because to achieve a target, what do you need? You need skills, right? Where do you get the skills from? You get the skills from learning. So in your target setting, you must infuse also continuous learning and development, whether that's using workshops like Uprush is running, whether it's using micro-learning or Move Up. We use micro-learning in Move Up to attain that. Right? The next thing that you can infuse is feedback. All right. So feedback, it can be from the bottom to the top, right? From the team member to the team leader. It can go down the way from the team leader to the team member. And of course, very powerful, you have peer-to-peer feedback as well. So your colleagues can help you grow together, right? And then I want to highlight also the circle here, which is your cohort. So this is the group that you will use to test your new program, right? And as I said before, these guys will then become the champions for your new performance management program, and they'll sell it for you to the company, right? So yeah. So moving forward, I want to show you an actual example of how do we transition in our career, transition from traditional performance management uh, into your new performance management, right? So first of all, take your cohort and start with a focus group, all right? Basically, it means that you will ask them the questions, find out what are their needs. You know, speak to your managers, speak to your team members, and based upon that, we come up with a set of targets, right? And again, the targets, it must be aligned with the team member and with their job. It must be important to them. They need to find importance in what they do and see where that fits in to the management target and to the company vision. Right? And we use OKRs. We use OKRs to do this, right? And next, we move on to publish, right? What does this mean? Basically, every small milestone that your team members achieve, publish it, right? Celebrate the small achievements of your team members. So you can do this if you have a Facebook Workplace. You can use it, maybe you have a Viber group. You can do it in your newsfeed, like in Move Up, for example, we use a company newsfeed. But the important thing is that you publish the results and really recognize the people, right? So maybe you'll take pictures and post pictures of them achieving the targets on your newsfeed, whatever works for you, right? And then at the end of the 2-week transition process, what we will do is we'll have, if the company has a budget for it, we'll have a rewards day, a rewards town hall where the top performers are recognized, right? And if you don't have the budget, that's okay. You know, it could be just some kind of token from HR, something to show your appreciation to your stakeholders, right? And I know this is a lot of work, but you will end up with a lot of resources, right? And that brings me on to the last one, branding, okay? You can use all these resources, these pictures of the employees, and you can build a positive brand for your company, right? And it brands your organization as a great place to work, okay? And again, I've included the light bulbs here because it's important to, across the entire process, have continuous training and development. So I hope with this example, you're able to see, you know, not just how to improve performance management, but also how you can use performance management, or you can use this model to also improve your employer brand, right? And with that, I'd like to go back to Mr. Paul.
Jamie and the team actually are working with companies like from restaurants to office teams, etc. And from the beginning of the talk, I shared that a lot of people were telling us, why do you need a performance management system for people working remotely? And this was only highlighted when COVID happened. And then all of a sudden, we are all working from home. The point on this example that we highlighted today is that your performance management system shouldn't be just a platform. It shouldn't be just a system for evaluating purposes. You need to look at performance management programs. How can you align that with your compensation benefits team? How can you align that with your learning and development team so that you're converting it into not a stressful system, but actually an HR program that goes on from having the right targets, having an ongoing discussion with the stakeholders involved, people getting recognized. And with all these materials, at the end of this, just 2 weeks for one small team, you already have an employer branding campaign ready to be published within the organization first and foremost, and of course outside the organization for your recruitment campaigns, right? And the overall theme of the program is really on technology at the center of HR and business processes. I want to add one last tip on people who might be looking at platforms right now or trying to understand new technologies in your HR processes or in your business processes. Real time is millennial thing. That's my generation's thing. We like everything real time. I want to be tracked, my performance real time. I want to be recognized real time. I want to be rewarded real time. I want to be able to discuss with my manager in real time. But there's a new workforce coming in, new generation, the Gen Zs. And for them, yes, okay, real time. But we also want it personalized. This is because they are used to platforms with AI infusion to it that already recognizes Apple Music downloaded. I like country music. I like rock music. I like this artist. So their experience with the technology is already very personalized. So if there are two things that you can look into when you're choosing a platform or creating an HR program, it's really that having a real-time aspect to it and also a personalized aspect to it, if possible, because this is the expectation and the behavior of the generations that are in our workforce right now and in the coming years. Right. I want to end this presentation with a statement we made in the middle of the presentation on what is performance management to us. And I want HR managers, business owners, and investors, if you're watching, to really look at performance management in a way that it's your way of ensuring that the experiences of your employees are conducive, meaning it's a place that enables them to do their jobs at their best with very minimal worries. And in doing so, they grow. Make sure that the growth of the individual is at the center also of your performance management and other processes that you have in the company. So with that, I would like to say thank you again to Ms. Rona and Approach team. I think we're going to head to the next section of the program. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much po. Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you very much po. We actually had a very active comment section right
Yes.
now. Everyone is sharing their thoughts when it comes to performance management. A lot of people have questions. A lot of people are providing their own insights on how performance management should be done. And I think this is the most interactive that we've had in all of the webinars that we've been through. Usually they just post the questions, but right now we've had people giving in their 2 cents, people giving in, sharing whatever experiences that they've had in the past. So before we proceed to our Q&A portion, let me just introduce everyone to what Move Up is about. So people, please watch this. Ayan po. Okay, so let's start now. Sa inaabangan ng lahat ang ating Q&A portion. Yes, let's start with the first question that we've had. I just need to scroll back. Medyo mahaba-habang scrolling back ito. Ayan. So yung first question po natin is one from one of our, actually, I know her personally. She's one of our esteemed HR colleagues. She's asking, why does talent management not happen on the bell curve? What's with the bell curve?
All right.
I know that there are still some companies who make use of bell curve, but it's not something that's actually being recommended by most HR professionals. Why is this so?
This is on, I guess, going back to the statement that we made, that performance management, talent management in general, has to be really about the growth of the individual, and the initiatives, the systems, the platforms that we create should be sustainable in a way that it doesn't just ramp up or just help uplift the employees at a certain point and then let it die out. It has to be continuous and it has to be sustainable.
Okay. Ayan. In my actually I have worked with a company in the past that makes use of the bell curve, and both bell curve is typically associated with forced ranking or stack ranking.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons why it's not really recommended, because it's more of pitting people against another, and the focus is more on individual approach rather than getting people to work together and motivate each other and really help each other. I think that's one of the reasons why it's not something that's really recommended by most companies. But I think Microsoft is still using this one. I'm not so sure, but I
I
think
know
they are
some
still using
companies.
that one. Yeah. Okay, so we also have a question from Miss Farida. How does performance-based management differ from outcome-based management? Ayan.
I'm not familiar with what an outcome-based management is, but our definition of performance-based management is making sure that targets are in place, and that employees understand the target and they understand the overall impact of it. Together with the actual results is also the ability to know how they come up with those results.
Yeah. Jamie, you have thoughts on this one?
Again, I'm not familiar with the
Outcome based.
Mm-hmm. I think for me. I think it's the same. I mean, if you're performing, there's supposed to be an outcome,
Yeah.
unless, like what you have mentioned earlier, there's a setting of the wrong metrics.
Yeah.
If there's a wrong metrics, you might be performing, but with the wrong metrics, it might not seem like you're performing. So, but
I,
I think if everything is correct, performance equals outcome.
yes.
That's for
I
me.
think it's more of the focus, Miss Rona, on the outcome side. It's really the end results. Performance also includes the means on how the results were achieved.
I think yeah, that could be one way of looking
Yeah.
at it. But if you're asking me, for example, if we're pitting based versus outcomes based, I think each has its own advantage. But I
Right.
would defer more to the performance based, because sometimes some positions do not necessarily have an instant outcome, or the outcome may not be that tangible or may not be that visible. So I would say that the focus should be more on the performance rather than just on the outcome. Kasi pag outcome, I think it's just the sales, the numbers,
Right.
the figures, the effort that goes along those. There's not much focus being given to that area, and that might not be fair also to the employee.
yeah,
Ayan.
the process is important. Mm.
Okay. So another question that we have right now is from Ray Pabatang. What metrics should we use in performance management, or any indicators, key performance indicators? What metrics do you recommend?
So there are two types of, I think when we talk about metrics here for performance management, is it to measure our performance management initiative or the performance management metrics that we will set for the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the performance management metrics that we set for the companies, we follow deeply what OKRs are, as Jamie mentioned. So just a very quick walkthrough on what objectives key results are. It started with Intel a couple of
Mm-hmm.
decades ago, actually. So they basically, what we did was, okay, in a company, you probably have thousands of metrics that you can measure. In marketing alone, we already have hundreds: cost per acquisition, cost per miles, and all that sort, cost per keyword, and all this. But where OKR comes in is you map out all these metrics that you can measure in the company. You pinpoint which ones actually move the needle, that if I focus the attention on this metric, it has a bigger impact to the team and to the organization at large. So that's the idea with OKR. So that's what we recommend with the companies that we work with. If you go to Up, for example, sorry for shameless plugging, Miss Rona, but the best way to answer this is we've set different types of OKR. These are presets. You just have to choose what's your function, what's your department, and there are some suggested OKRs in the platform.
Okay. For Ray, if what you're asking is how to set up your indicators and your key results areas. I think the best way to go about it is to have first an understanding of what the position is all about. And like
Mm,
what Jamie and Paul has mentioned earlier, it has to be aligned with the objectives of the company. That's the best way to set up the KPIs and the KRAs for each of the position that you have. There is no generic KPI or KRA that's applicable to all industries, all organizations, all positions. There's nothing like that. Even if you use, let's say, competency based performance management, there's
mm,
still specific competencies, there's still specific KPIs and KRAs that are applicable only to a specific position, to one
correct.
position, and not something that you can apply to everyone. Okay?
Just
Actually, sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
no, so just to add on that, Miss Rona, I think that's why I'd like to go back to the 6A model. The first one is assess, right? So as Miss Rona said, you cannot apply the same target to everyone, right? Because if you don't make that assessment, they will not see how that target fits into the company vision, and they have less motivation to achieve that target. So using a cookie cutter approach in that way doesn't necessarily work, which is why you really have to engage with your stakeholders to be able to set those targets.
Yeah.
Correct, I agree.
And
Okay, our
also, I think,
next, yes, sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
Ms. Rona, I wanted to add that also, like flexibility on the targets. Maybe you've set the right targets, but without flexibility, it won't work. One extreme in good examples is the targets that you've set January 2020.
Oh,
if those
yes.
if those are not flexible, you're in a very
Wala
wrong
na.
target setting right now. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
correct. It
Yes.
has to be flexible, and
Yes.
you as HR we have to be very very quick in adapting to the
Mhm.
changes in the market and the situation, especially right now. Excuse me. So the next question that we have is, what does OKR mean? From
Mm.
Carl Jeffrey.
Jamie, do you want to take this one?
Sure. OKR stands for Objective Key Result. Okay, so you'll have your objective, right, which is something that you want to something that you need to achieve, right, and then the key results are the milestones to achieve that target, right. Example, your objective is to get $5,000 in sales, and then the key result is that 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%, right. The important thing with OKRs is that, again, just to reiterate, that it aligns with the management above you, right? And that aligns with the company vision. And Paul, do you have anything to add on that?
Beyond the alignment, it's really OKR represents again identifying the right metrics that has an impact to your team and then the overall objectives of the department and the organization. It's basically cascading the targets in a way that you understand what's the impact of your day-to-day jobs. The biggest problem with especially non-sales, non-measurable targets is a lot of employees go to the office every day just waiting for their bosses to tell them what to do with
Yeah.
no set priorities for the month whatsoever, simply because they say, we're not in sales, we don't have measurable targets. And that has to change. OKR allows this behavior to change from our management approach these days.
Actually, when I was still with Gameloft, we made use of OKR. It was something that was implemented in the whole Gameloft organization. So it doesn't matter if your office or your studio is in France, or it's in Vietnam, or it's in the Philippines. We made use of OKR. What happens is the top management sets the overall objectives and key results for the whole organization. Okay, they don't set for each of the positions. It's just the for the whole organization. So if, for example, their objective for next year is to reach X percentage of advertisements in this platform, blah blah blah, that's for the whole organization. Now, each of the studios and each of the studio managers would have to come up with their own version of an OKR aligned to that one that they would apply to their own studios.
Yeah.
And then from that, each of the managers in that studio, department managers in that studio, would have to come up with their own OKRs, objectives and key results, that is aligned to the studio OKR, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
The
I have a
best thing, sorry, go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead, Miss Rona. Sorry.
The best thing about OKR is there is actually no fail or no pass or fail.
Exactly.
What we did then, and I think this is how OKR is generally done, is that there is a certain percentage. So, for example, if your target for let's say for quarter one is to let's say hire 10 developers, and you were able to hire only 8 developers, it doesn't mean that you failed. It just means that you were able to achieve 80% of your target, which means that if you achieve 80% of your target, you're going to get 80% of the bonus or 80% of the increase. So
Yes.
the tying up with the rewards is very easy. In no case, unless you're really not performing, in no case do you get 0%. And in no case do you feel like you're a failure. There's still something that you get depending on how much effort you put into it.
Exactly. I think one very good example on how powerful this approach, Ms. Rona, is a restaurant chain that we did here in Vietnam. And this is actually, in general, how your performance management systems can be so powerful and impactful for the organization. This restaurant, Ms. Rona, they had over 300 employees, right? So initially, they used the platform, they started assigning OKRs. And the more they adjust and learn their OKRs every month, they identified that setting the right target is so important, to a point that they realize that they don't have to set a target on how many revenue per table, but instead how much is the revenue for specific products in the menu, because those products are high profit products. So they were able to shift the focus of the waiters and say, hi, why don't you buy this, why don't you buy that, because that's the target set by the restaurant manager.
And the thing is, OKR changes. It's a
Yeah.
very flexible approach actually. So like when I was with Game Law, every quarter we reviewed the OKRs and check if there's if we need to have it change, if there's a different direction. You can easily make the change without having to wait for a couple of months, 6 months, or a year before you can actually change that. And I think that's the appeal, at least for us, that's the appeal of OKR. But I still see and I still understand the value of those what you have mentioned earlier, that you check just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 appraisal system.
Yeah.
There's still some value to it, but if a company is really trying to focus on their growth and their the growth of their employees, I think the OKR approach is a very good thing that anyone can adapt.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next question is from Isaac Histo. How has the pandemic affected the HR process?
Oh God. I think I'll let you answer this, Ms. Rona, but let me just share with you very quickly our experience with the pandemic, right? For the last 2.5 years, we've been doing remote work. We have offices in the Philippines, we have offices in Vietnam, but nobody's required to go to the office. You can work anywhere, anytime. That's our that's our slogan. Work anywhere, anytime. We just have our OKRs. We're all using app on our mobile, and we're using on the web. So wherever you choose to work, you can do that. So when all these lockdown happened and people are like trying to navigate how remote work happened, there was really no major impact to us, except that people who were laughing at us before, or who didn't really get the concept of the business, started calling back and say, hey, we understand now where your platform is coming from on why remote work management is important, right? So I think I let you
Yeah.
share what are the major changes in HR during this
Actually, in HR, especially in the Philippines, I am not sure with Vietnam because I've only worked with one Vietnamese company and they're very adaptive. But with the Philippines, a lot of changes happened. I mean, prior to the pandemic, not many companies are willing to entertain the idea of telecommuting. I think employers are afraid that if they allow their employees to telecommute or work from home or work from anywhere, they will not be as productive as they are if they're working from the office. Which is, the pandemic has proven that it's not the
Mm.
case. It's not always the case. Employees who are really disciplined and companies who have really set up everything right from the start did not have any problems with productivity. There might be a slight dip
Mm.
because of course we don't know what's happening, but they were able to pick up as quickly as possible. But a number of changes in HR, we are now forced to look for tools, platforms, entertain the idea of sending all the documentations via email. The HR people became more concerned about the labor code, what's happening, what are the guidelines. Because in the past, HR people just check what other HR professionals are doing. They just ask for best practices. But right now, they've become more assertive in their role as an HR. They've become more inquisitive. They now check the labor code. They now check guidelines. They do not just believe what they hear. They are now more participative in management decision. I think that's one of the positive outcome of the situation is that the HR people are now being seen as frontliners.
Mm.
And no, we're not the same frontliners as the doctors and the nurses. Of course, they are really the heroes in the situation. But as HR, management is now seeing the importance of HR, and they are now understanding the value that we are not just paper or pencil pushers. We are not just paper generators.
All right.
We do not just work on documenting processes and everything. We can actually help them go through this and know what's the next step and ensure that everyone's taken care of. The employees are still motivated. The employees are productive. I think that's one of the at least a positive outcome of the current situation that we are in. Negative outcome: HR people are very tired right now. That's yeah. It's a sad thing because there's no concept of logging in and logging out, because
Mm.
the work and the life is no longer balanced, and they are all happening at the same time. Most HR professionals are forgetting that they are humans too,
Mm.
so they tend to overwork. They tend to go beyond the 8 hours that they should be working, and they tend to get burned out. And I think
Mm.
right now management has to face the truth that they have to be be appreciative. They have to really take care of their HR people. I think it's one of the things that most people are forgetting. Most managers and most owners are forgetting that your HR people are employees too,
Mm.
and if they are burned out, they can't help you with whatever it is that you're going through. Yeah. Okay. So we have another question. This one from Miss Vebeline. We still have employees who belong to the older generation. I would assume boomers ito. What can you suggest for them to improve performance other than just compliance?
For us, I think one of the things why we diversify also the generations within the organization is there are strengths on the on each generation, right? I think one of the things that we can probably launch on the older, I'm so sorry, I'm not comfortable to say older generation, to the boomers is basically there's so much wisdom and actual experience that they have. Maybe we can start adding an additional role to them to become coaches, mentors, trainers within the organization. Start talking about your experiences, start talking about the things that you've learned within the organization. If there's one thing that I've learned in the last 8 years since I started my own first business, it's really the importance of actual direct experience of the person to a specific job. So for those who are in earlier generations, it's an opportunity to actually train and help develop the workforce. Now, how can we help you improve your performance? We as owners or as investors, probably we can add as part of your performance management criteria or KPIs or OKRs, or however you call your targets are, is the numbers of trainings that you conduct within the organization. And if you're a business owner or a general manager watching, again, the value that your senior staffs can have if you allow them to train and share what they do within the organization is priceless. Google does this. Um, it's familiar in Apapap. We do peer-to-peer recognition. Google took it to the next level, and they do peer-to-peer education. They allow individuals in the organizations to train each other, and they have a platform for that. So I think that's where we can bring in our more senior, more experienced members of the team.
Agree. And it goes without saying that yeah, we have to make sure that again we'll go back to the assessment level in the 6 A's that we have mentioned earlier. We have to assess the generations that we have in our workforce and see what ticks or what clicks with them. What's motivating them, what's helping them. Because even if we usually say that millennials are like this, boomers are too rigid, the incoming generation is very flexible. We'll have all of these generalizations, but at the end of the day, these generalizations do not apply to everyone. There are still some factors that we need to take into consideration. So again, assess, and I mean, talk to your people, talk to them, understand where they are coming from. That's the best way that you can understand how you can help them improve their performance more than just compliance. Okay, so our next question is from Ms. Jermaine Kalatayan. How do we control favoritism among team leaders in giving their appraisals to their team members? Ayan. This is a common question among HR actually.
Well, I think on the 6 metrics that McKinsey identified, transparency, I think if there's some sort of transparency on targets within the organization, managers will less likely going to be biased because the results of the appraisals will be available to the team. We do this, for example, in the company, we have our OKRs set, and each team member can actually see the performance of the other team members. We have a specific term for this in the company, which is called restorative discipline. It's a concept in psychology where instead of punishing underperformers, you put the targets open and do of course you have your coaching, mentoring, etc., but part of the motivation is, oh, I need to do a little extra work to my progress bar goes towards 100% because the rest of the team is already in 80% and so on. So I guess that's where my input on that part is.
Yeah, just to add on that, it's this is where it's really important to really celebrate the wins your team members, right? I talked before about publishing these results, that the high achievers, maybe you could have a leaderboard, whether that's like through an application or when we go back to having an office, if it's like maybe it's just a wall, right? But by putting something there that people can see the top performers, it just creates more transparency, and I think that's the most important part. Like Paul said, it's really creating transparency, and the results speak for themselves.
I think this is actually one of the things that I would be discussing when we do the gamification in HR, because the leaderboards and things like that. This is actually part of the gamification process. And I think it works, especially if you have millennials and the next generation in your workplace, because they tend to be a bit competitive. But of course, when you do this, you need to make sure that everyone is aware of what it's all about. Because I've also been with companies where they have a wall of people, of performers, but people don't know how to be included there. So the tendency is that they think that these people are the favorites, or these people are close to management. So it builds an incorrect appreciation of the program. So everyone also needs to, the management and HR also needs to make sure that everyone understand what that is for.
Yeah, we
and
have
how they can be included there.
Yeah, we have clients, Ms. Rona, who's asking because we have a badge system in the app, right? So automatically, if you achieve 20%, you get a badge.
Mhm.
And we have some creative clients and saying that we want our own badge system in HR. We have our own badge system in marketing, and we're saying that to be able for everybody in your 2000 packs company understand what that badge mean, what that medal means, they need to know what it is and how you got it. That's why we're suggesting a generic company wide
Yeah.
badge. So when you see that on the leaderboard, I have 20%, I have 50% badge, or a gold badge or a silver badge, they know what that represents. You achieve 50% of your target on time.
Yes, correct, correct. I agree. And to Jamaica, aside from controlling favoritism, the next question would always be how to prevent the biases. In
Mm.
Game Love, one of the things that we have done to remove the biases, because in the past there was a time when we were using the 5 point Likert scale, the one, two, three, four,
Mm.
five. So one way to minimize the bias in that is that you need to have a specific definition for each of the numbers. What makes for a five? What makes for a four? What makes for a three? And to reduce the problem with central tendency or the error of central tendency, where people just tend to circle the number three because it's in the center, it's neither the lowest nor the highest. What we did was to control that by having a 4 point Likert scale instead of a 5 point Likert scale. There's no middle, and you have to really figure out whether you should be giving a four, which is above average, or a two, or sorry, yeah, or the three, which is an average. Okay, so that's one way on how you can control that. If the problem is with biases and providing appraisal that's not really reflective of their performance. Okay. Next question, and we have a lot of questions right now. Naku. Next
600 comments.
question. Yes. Next question. What resources are available during the performance appraisal process? I think what she's asking is what are the things that they need to have on hand whenever they do the performance appraisal process.
I really don't know how the traditional approach works, Ms. Rona. I can only speak on how we do it in the organization and, of course, in the companies that we work with. We just need a phone for the employee, and then the HR manager or the team leader just need to have the laptop or a tablet, just a bigger screen, so she sees the automatically generated report from the system. So the phone on the employee side basically is a progress bar like a game. How many percent of each of the set OKRs did he or she achieve? How many badge she unlocked?
Mm-hmm.
Um, really, the for us the performance management session is just to discuss how much bonuses you got, how many badges you got, which improvement points you need to do, because we align the performance management appraisal with the compensation and benefits team and the learning and development team. So they already get the recognition, they already get the rewards real time as soon as they achieve each milestone in their target, right? They also got the support on the learning real time when they needed the learning as they do their job, right? The performance management appraisal or discussion for us is really just reviewing the results of the employee and even just asking, are you happy with the reward you achieved this month? What are the other rewards that you would suggest that would interest and motivate people in the company? You have 50 badges last month and so on and so forth. So for us, it's really a dialogue on how do you think about the result? What can be improved from that result? There is no more a moment of we walk in and then we mark and so on for us, because the marking system happens real time through the platform.
Okay. Well, and I think that's one of the salient points of Move Up, the application. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, for those who still are making use of paper-based appraisal system, I think it would help if you have the results, past results of at least the last performance appraisal. That way, you can check what happened when you have set the objectives the last time that you spoke with your employee. What's the status on that? How were they able to achieve the goals or the objectives that you have set last time? I think that's one of the resources that you would need if you're doing your performance appraisal. Now, if you're asking for specific resources that you can use in order to improve your performance appraisal process, it would depend on how your performance management system or your management process is set up. So there are a lot of platforms. There are a lot of tools that you can use. One is the what we have been talking about, which is the Move Up platform. If you don't have the budget, or if you're still using manual performance appraisal, you just need to make sure that your performance appraisal clearly reflects the competencies or the key results areas that you need your employees to achieve. Keep in mind that your performance appraisal can be used if ever there's poor performance, that can be used as documentation if ever you do need to terminate someone because of poor performance. So you need to make sure that all of your documentations are in place for that one. Okay? How can we perform 100% in work if management has favoritism? Nako, it's a very popular sorry Jamie, it's a very popular topic here in the Philippines because it's a I think it's been a problem for quite some time now. I think even when I was still starting out as an HR practitioner, there's always been talk about favoritism, how to curb favoritism, how to address favoritism. I think it's something that hasn't been really addressed here in the Philippines.
Jamie,
So
how's the favoritism case in Scotland? I just want to know, Miss Rona, because I don't.
I think it's not a huge problem. Really, we still have like the standards of transparency, and that kind of holds everyone to account. Of course, you're always going to have favoritism. It's a really difficult question, right? You're always going to have favoritism, and it's a very difficult question. But all I can say is, again, going back to transparency, and the results will speak for themselves. But it's a very difficult question.
My point on this one, Miss Rona, is I want to go back on the mentality of the person who feels like there's favoritism, or even if there's an actual favoritism happening within the organization. I think on the business owner and the HR side, there has to be something done to that. But on the individual basis, I want to just touch base a little bit on that, because we've been talking about how to improve the HR processes to avoid favoritism in the system and then the processes and all that. But if you're going through this and you feel like your boss is not being fair, I also experienced that. But I only told myself that whatever I do here is me, especially if I'm in the earlier stage of my career, is an opportunity for me to pile up my experiences. I am here. I have opportunities to learn how things are done. I'm just gonna learn as much as I could, and I'm gonna do better with my job. I first and foremost focus on me. Now, if that favoritism has an impact on how you do your job and how you feel towards the organization, you talk to HR. Okay, this is on a different perspective. We're just shifting the business perspective to an individual perspective. But for me, when I feel like that, I tell myself that this is an opportunity for me right now in this job to just learn as much as I could. I'll do as much as I can, so I'll be recognized, and even to a point that it's inevitable not to recognize me because my accomplishments are so in there. I'll convert that feeling, that situation, into an opportunity and a motivation to do better with my job, so that not only that team manager recognizes what I do for the organization, but even my peers and other peoples in the organization can recognize me on my contribution to the team. Now I'll pass on to Ms. Rona on how we can improve the HR side of things.
I actually agree on what you have mentioned, Paul. Let me just speak first from the point of view of an employee. If you feel that there is favoritism, if you can see that there is favoritism, whether there really is, it doesn't matter if there really is or it is not. If you feel that there is favoritism, if it's not impacting your work, shrug it off.
Yeah.
Focus on your work, do your tasks so that it's impossible for them to ignore your contribution. But if the favoritism is affecting your mental health, affecting
Mm,
your productivity, affecting how you see your team members, your colleagues, and the organization, then it might be time to look for other companies where you would be more appreciated. Okay, I think most people are afraid right now of just leaving their companies, up and leaving their companies, or resigning because of the current pandemic. And that fear is warranted. And that fear might lead you to say that I will just stay here, I'll bear it out. If you can bear it out, why not? But if it has an impact on your mental health, and this is very important, you might need to check for other options. Because once your mental health and once your view of the organization, once your view of your colleagues and team members have changed, it will be very hard for you to be productive. No matter what you do, you won't be as productive as you would want to be, and you would always have this hatred. You will always have this anger inside you, eating you up, and you will not be productive. You will drag yourself to work even if you're working from home, and that's not good.
yeah.
That will only result to you being less productive, and the favorite being more on the end of, see, that's the reason why I'm the favorite. Okay, yeah, as you were saying.
Yeah, I think, Miss Rona, one of the things that I learned and I experienced personally managing Vietnamese employees is how open they are with their opinion.
Oh yes.
Yeah, if they're not happy about something, whether you're the director, you're the CEO, they're gonna tell you that. And I think
Yes.
there's a little bit of that we Filipinos can learn. The confidence to constructively share your opinion about something or about someone. Look at it as an opportunity for you, to confirm if your feeling, your assumptions are really there. If maybe you're just having, sometimes a problem that doesn't exist. Number two, also look at it as an opportunity to share something to this person so that this person eventually becomes a better manager. So you're becoming a mentor, or someone who just shares your concern to help him become a better manager. So instead of, really keeping it to yourself, maybe the best way is to share in a constructive manner and the right timing and the right platform, maybe with the help of HR if there's a need for uh, a middle person. But yeah, look at it on that perspective, as an opportunity for you to help this manager become a better manager. For
Yes, I agree. Kasi baka naman we're thinking that there is favoritism, and we're thinking all of these weird thoughts, pero there doesn't exist. There is actually no problem in the first place. So we also need
right,
to develop that ability to speak up and let the other party know that this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking about, and this is what I am feeling. I
mm,
agree that Vietnamese are very upfront
yeah,
with their opinion and how they're feeling. I've worked with some of them, and for them, it's not something that actually that they take personally. They
yes,
don't take it personally. If you tell them that they are wrong, and you have a sound reason why do you think they are wrong, they would accept that and they would
mm,
learn from it. And I think it's one of the things that we need to develop. Some
yeah,
Filipinos, especially those who have worked with who work in multinational companies, they are able to develop that ability to be assertive. But some they still have to work on that, and I think it's one of the things that we need to build on, the
mm,
ability to really speak what we feel
mm,
instead of bottling it up and then later on just getting burned out and giving up.
yeah,
Yeah.
Because
Now
if
from
you,
the sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
I'm just saying, if you do hold on to that, you never hear the other side of the story, right? And you can create almost like your own story, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you've never spoken to your manager about it, so maybe your manager doesn't know that you think there is favoritism, right? How can they know if you don't tell them?
mm,
And he might also not be aware that he actually has favorites.
Oh yes, true,
So
also.
yeah,
yeah. I think
because
Mr.
go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, Ms. Arno, we're talking about the theme is technology, right? There are platforms that you can actually use to enable real-time feedback. It's a feedback
Mm-hmm.
loop platform where people who might not be very confident, or culture like ours in the Philippines, who's not really a culture of say it as you think or as you
Yeah.
feel, there are platforms that allows anonymity, and people to share how they feel towards a certain person or towards a certain process or systems within your company. Um, yeah, so I think that we can also utilize that for the benefit of the discussion, which is on HR technology.
Yes. Now, from the side of HR, okay, and this has been an ongoing topic. For favoritism has always been a headache for HR. Um, the first thing that we have to understand is we'll always have biases, and we always have a bias for and a bias against people. That's a given fact. We may be conscious about it, and we may not be. Some of us might not be conscious about it. So it's a reality, but it doesn't mean that favoritism is something that cannot be resolved. Paul mentioned something about platforms that you can use if ever you want to get feedback about certain people. You can make use of that. In one of the companies that I've worked with in the past, as part of the 360-degree feedback, we have a platform where anonymously the co-workers of that person can give in their feedback, whether they are happy with that person, they're not happy with that person, what are the areas that they think that person should improve on, and what areas that person is great on. So that's one way of letting them know without really exposing yourself. Kasi we Filipinos takot tayo na mabalikan.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of our fears. We fear that if ever we say something negative, whoever that person is would go back to us and put up a fight about it. Okay, that's
Welcome to the
one of our
Philippines,
fears.
Jamie.
We do not like being confrontational.
Yes.
Majority of Filipinos don't like being confrontational, and that's what we are trying to avoid when we don't tell exactly what we feel. But there are platforms like this that you can make use of. And HR, the best way for me to handle or to decrease favoritism is to make sure that when you promote someone to a managerial or supervisory position, that person has been trained or has undergone all the
Mm.
necessary development programs for them to be a better lead, a better manager, or a better head of a certain department. Okay, you will not 100% remove all of the biases, but at least you would be able to guide how they think, how they handle situation, how they communicate themselves. You would be able to guide them on that one, and that will help decrease the favoritism. Let the managers and supervisors know how to handle team members who think they have favorites, and things like that. That's one of the for me, that's the best way to do that. When you promote someone without them going through all of this process, then that's when favoritism happens, because a rank and file will have a rank and file mindset. If you put them in a supervisory position without the proper training, they will take their rank and file mindset, working in a team, working with a group, having people back them up, having people work with them. They will take that mindset and apply it in their position as a lead. And
Mm.
they will work more closely with people who are okay with them, and they will shun people who are not okay with them. And that's not what a leader or a manager or a supervisor is all about. The manager supervisor has to be able to work whether the people like them or not. Okay, so you have to train your people before you promote them, before you get them to be leaders or supervisors. Okay, next question. I still have a lot more. Sorry. And we only have about 17 minutes. Performance management system usually use behavioral metrics, but the measurement may sometimes be subjective. How do we flip the table and make this more tangibly measurable? Yeah, actually, this is one of the most common problems with HR. Like for example, in the HR position, some of the tasks that we have or some of the competencies that we have are not cannot be converted to numbers and are more on soft skills. How do you make this measurable?
Yeah. We mentioned OKR earlier, right? So we're going to expound a little bit on that one, on the bigger picture of what OKR model is all about. The overall picture, the bigger matrix actually is called GOKRA. Okay, it's GOKRA. I saw a photo of one of the trainers on OKR, which is like a golden okra. Okra is like lady's finger. So G stands for goal, which is the goal of the organization of the company. OKR is your objective key results. Right now, for non-measurable, we call it qualitative instead of quantitative targets. You have the A, which is the activities that reflects how these soft skills, how these non-measurable qualitative results can be converted into actual actionable activities on a weekly, monthly basis as a form of a checklist. And it's also associated with your progress bar. So, for example, you have activity 1, 2, 3 associated to competency A. 4, 5, 6 activity is associated to competency B, and so on. So each time you complete that activity on a weekly, monthly basis, your progress bar moves. You've converted now a competency into an actual actionable item and measured on your progress bar. Progress bar is like your game, 0 to 100%. So you've converted that competency into an action and into something measurable. This is one of the things that we actually do as part of training of onboarding for the clients that we bring in.
I don't have anything to add to that because that's also how we do that. You convert it to an actionable item, or behavioral indicators as what I would generally call them. Okay, before hitting operations, performance management plan metric must be discussed along with agreement. Right? Yes, that's correct. The best way to handle your performance management plan, your KRAs, and everything, the metrics that you would like to set for a specific person or position, this must be discussed right from the start. Okay, because let's look at it from the point of view of the law. If ever, for example, you need to terminate someone because they are performing poorly, you need to make sure that you present to Dole a documentation that shows that the metrics were discussed, the standards were discussed, but the employee still did not meet those standards. So you need to make sure that you discuss all of this right from the start.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the problems earlier, Ms. Rona, was lack of dialogue, right? It's not necessarily just lack of dialogue, but the less frequent dialogue. There are approaches in companies where you have stand-up alignment for 10 minutes, 15 minutes in the morning. And this is very common for tech teams, for example. You have an open platform for communication on real time so people can actually ask adjustments on the targets or help on achieving their targets and so on. So the frequency, the dialogue itself is important, but the frequency of dialogue is also important to continuously align with the employee on what their targets are and how they're going to achieve them.
And it doesn't have to be a formal dialogue. Kasi
Right.
most HR would, they think that it has to be formal, there has to be a meeting set in place, that it will happen on this. It doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes, the less formal the dialogue is, the more whatever you have discussed, the more it will stick. Kasi there's no pressure, there's no fear. There's just the understanding of what the other party would want and what you can provide. So it doesn't have to be a formal one. The I would go for an informal one because it's less terrifying actually for the whoever's being appraised. Okay, so how can we better implement the giving of feedback given that employees as well as their immediate supervisor are not used to doing this? Do you have any tips to help instill this and make employees think that giving feedback is helpful and not the other way around?
Well, there are a lot of trainings like creating constructive feedbacks and so on. Let me first begin with the importance of empowering your middle management. We've been conducting researches here in Vietnam and Asia Pacific, and the top reason why people leave the company is not compensation, it's not lack of bonuses, it's not even merely just favoritism, but it's really the lack of leadership competency of your middle management. So let me begin answering that by empowering your middle management. Sometimes the CEO is great, the department heads are top notch, and then you have the supervisors who are 26, 27 years old and whose background is not really who's relevant but was not trained to be a manager or a supervisor. So empower your middle management. This is something that if organizations focus on, we won't even have these questions moving forward. Number two, we have an exercise that we create and say, all right, we don't do performance appraisals like the traditional ones, but if there's anything that you can improve on how you did things in the last month or in the last term, what would be those first 5 to 10 things that you would do? So it wasn't the manager telling the employee what to do better or pinpointing what are the things that were not done correctly. It's the employee actually reflecting on what he or she could have done better. That's number two in terms of feedback. So based on the results that they submit to you and you say, okay, we have number one, why weren't we able to do this? Well, how do you think we can make this a reality this month? So it's a coaching tactic wherein you are giving feedback by allowing the employee to actually get the answers themselves before or you telling them what to do and how to do it and so on. So this is very powerful. That's why a lot of people are saying, why are these coaches everywhere? I believe in coaching. Coaching empowers people because coaching comes from a place that actually our people knows the answer. As managers, part of our job on coaching them is not necessarily telling them how to do things, but allowing them to discover at their own pace, at their own time, on how they could have done things better. That's why coaching is so powerful. And of course, I think Jamie can also input on the power of continuous learning and micro learning and so on. That's his era. I'm not very keen on that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, to talk about feedback, though, just briefly, 'cause you're talking there a lot about feedback from the manager to the employee. Feedback is not just one way, one direction street. I touched on this a little bit earlier. You have, of course, the feedback from your manager to your team member, but you also have your team member to the other team member, peer to peer. You should also have from the team member back upwards, right? So your manager needs feedback too. That's important. You had another question for me. Sorry, Paul, but LMD.
Oh no, I was just like, how do you infuse continuous learning so that people are capable of doing their job and really finding out what needs to be improved in certain occasions? Because sometimes, as one of my other favorite books, again, I have a lot of books, is How to Learn Things Fast, right? And that book basically has 4 steps. One of my favorite steps there is the ability to self-correct, right? Sometimes the best feedback you can get is allowing yourself or enabling yourself to identify what you can improve to yourself first and foremost, before actually waiting or allowing faults to go on and that your manager has to talk to you at a certain point, right?
I think the answer to that, Paul, is learning must be a continuous process, right? Because the problem with traditional learning and development, where you have, say, your onboarding process and you give the employee all the information that they need, right? What happens? It's actually 2 months later until they have to use some of that information that you told them in onboarding. Or what happens?
Correct.
Oh, it's forgotten.
Correct. I agree. I think that's also one of the problems. Sometimes we do the onboarding. We expect the employees to understand everything during the onboarding, and then after that, we just let them be.
Yeah.
There's no support in between that ensures that they are able to sustain their performance, and this is where the coaching will come in.
Yeah.
Just to dovetail on what you have mentioned, I remember there was in one of the companies that I work with, whenever we do the OKRs, when it comes to the employees, the OKR is not set by the manager.
Mhm.
The manager just lets the team members know that this is the OKR for the department. You as the team member
Yeah.
have to come up with your own OKR. We would not be the one to tell you what you need to accomplish. Let me know as your manager. Tell me what you think you need to accomplish in order for us to adhere to this, let's say, department OKR. And because the OKRs are coming from the team members, the rank and file people, there's already an ownership, and they are more than willing to monitor their own performance because they are the ones who set those performance, the bar for whatever performance that they should have.
Yeah. And I
Okay.
think it's important.
Yeah.
Sorry, one more on that one. And it's also important that the learning resources are available on demand as well, right? So if you're talking about achieving a target, um, it's important that the skills they need to achieve that target, right? They can access the learning content for that, whether it's a PDF document or whether you've got videos or whether you use an LMS or Google Drive or Move Up, as long as it's there and available for them to access. Sorry, Ms. Rona.
Actually, it answers the next question, which is, how do you do training if there's no budget available?
Mm. You watch
Yeah.
a Plush webinar series, number one.
So yeah, actually there are a lot of free
Yeah.
webinars happening right now, so you can take advantage of those if you have in one of the companies that I've worked with. One of the favorite things that all of the managers do is that if they come across a very good reference material, a very good reading material, we save it in one drive,
Yeah.
and everyone has access to that drive. Just like what both of you are saying earlier, everyone has access to that drive. So whenever an employee wants to read up on, let's say, improving their communication skills, they can just go ahead to that drive, that shared drive, and then they can download whatever materials they can find there and read through it. We also had brown bag sessions, literally 1 hour training sessions where employees share whatever it is that they are good at. If they're good at, let's say, painting, they do a 1 hour session for that. If they are very good in, let's say, doing presentations, they do a 1 hour training topic for that. Those are some of the options that you might want to consider if you are on a budget.
Yeah. Again, peer-to-peer training is very powerful.
Yes. So if you want to know more what I've the topics that I'm mentioning, like the brown bag session and things like that, I would be touching on those actually when we do the gamification, because we have,
Tuesday.
when you do the gamification, it envelops all of the HR processes and policy. So I would suggest that you watch that. It's happening on Tuesday. Okay, and then from Sir John Austria. Sir John is actually an HR professional for quite some time now. How do you manage objectives and key results that require absolutes? Like, for example, zero error, zero accident, zero bugs. How do you manage the objectives for that?
Well, it's again, OKR is a creating targets is a management skills, right? I think managing it, creating it is here's where co-creation comes in. Ms. Zorna touched base a little bit earlier on the importance of having a clear alignment at the beginning. Again, the top-down approach on creating OKRs. Ms. Zorna gave an example wherein the department head shares the department's OKR, and the next process starts with allowing individual members of the department to create their OKRs on how they perceive they can contribute to the department OKR. Now, zero margin of error for certain targets are very critical types of targets. This is where we even amplify alignment from the beginning. That even before you implement these types of performance management or targets set, make sure that the employee is clear about it, they are on board about it, and that they see the impact of that kind of target, and if there are errors made during the target, what are the possible consequences to the team and to the business at large. So I guess my point on addressing this, as what Ms. Rona mentioned earlier, is the power of alignment at the beginning and ongoing when you have targets or OKRs or KPIs or however you call them in the company are set with these types of sensitivity or importance in terms of error.
And if it's a sensitive target, I can understand, for example, for zero accidents, especially if you're in the
Yeah.
manufacturing industry. I think it's only fair that you go for let's say an OKR. Let's go for an OKR of a zero or 100%. You don't have to have an in between, especially if it's a critical key results area for that particular position. If we've done that in one of the positions that we've had in game law, for example, we had one position that is very critical that they do not have any errors, because any error would have a grave impact, not just a simple impact, not just a delay of a few minutes, grave impact if there is an error. So in that area, what we did is that either you do it 100% or you get 0%, and that would have an impact on your overall score. So I think
Mm,
it's only understandable that you also have those instances in your OKR. But again, like what Paul has mentioned, there has to be an understanding from both parties. Otherwise, it will lead to a lot of questions of
yeah.
why do we have this? Why is it zero? Why is it 100 or nothing?
Yeah.
So there should
The,
be an understanding.
the
Sorry,
other
go ahead.
approach there, Ms. Rona, that we do is if um, it is this kind of target, we usually ask more, how do you go from here to here? What are the possible measures that you need to create? Instead of measuring the number, we measure the activities that you need, precautionary activities that you need to do to ensure that there's minimal, if zero errors made in doing the process.
Yeah,
Um,
I can add on that one, Paul, actually. So as Ms. Rhoda touched on before, my background is actually biomeds. So I was, in my experience with Merck Pharma, of course, zero accidents is, you cannot have an accident in a lab, right? So instead, we created a metric called a near miss, right? And it was part of people's targets to report a certain number of near miss. So these are situations that have the potential to evolve into an accident, right? So kind of what Paul is saying here, creates a target around the precautionary measure, right? Or around situations that could become into an accident. And that's one way that you can really quantify that as a target.
Okay, agreed. Yeah, I agree with that one. We'll have near miss incidents as your KRA. Okay, so how does performance management become strategic?
Mm. Performance management, as it is already strategic if done correctly and sustainably. Again, we start with why. Why we're why we're conducting performance management. Is it purely for evaluation purposes, or is it to increase productivity, to increase the level of engagement of the employee to the company? For us, as we said, it's not a performance management system. For us, it's a performance management program, because the performance management with us is tied up with compensation and benefits team and the L&D team. We infuse those two sections of HR into the performance management program that we create. Jamie gave an example earlier wherein we set the targets at the beginning, and then because we track it real time, comp and ben team are informed that if this employee hits 20%, they get certain points, 2 points, 20 points that they can use to redeem whatever rewards we have in the company, right? So that is already involved. If, for example, they're not hitting their target, it's already 20%. They're only at 30% of the target, but it's already 80% of the time given. The
Mhm.
system will trigger a certain micro learning or course to the employee to watch to help them to hit that target. Simultaneously, the manager gets a notification and say, hey, don't wait for the end of the month or don't wait for the end of the quarter. This employee needs help now, simply because of the correlation on the target achieved and the time given to achieve the target. So
That's actually, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah. So the discussion point is, how do you infuse technology into your HR processes? This is that. And you know why this is powerful and strategic? Because it's the time for HR to shine. I really believe one of the reasons why in the last 8 years, I've invested in so many companies. I've invested in marketing agency. I've invested in a ticketing company. I've invested in e-commerce company. So many. 2.5 years, I decided to quit my job and become a full-time entrepreneur and focus all my time, money on HR technology, because I believe it's the time for HR to shine. And this is an example on how one daunting, stressful process of performance appraisal in the past became a bullet for companies to really propel the organization through the times that we have by simply shifting what that stressful process of performance appraisal into something that recognizes, rewards, and empowers people within your organization. So again, the more practical answer to that is tie up your performance management with your learning and development teams and your compensation and benefits team. Is you're just simply flipping the I want to measure your performance to I want to help you achieve your target. And
Yes.
in doing so, you get recognized and rewarded in the process. Same
Actually,
process,
that's
different view.
that's a very, very powerful statement that I would want all HR to keep in mind. The performance appraisal system, the performance management system, there should be a support for the employees to meet the goal. It should
Yes.
not be seen as a way to keep them or to penalize them if they do not meet the goal. The aim should be to help them meet the goal. Because if they meet the goal, then the company itself would also be able to meet whatever objectives or goals they have set for the year. It's a given. So, in order for your performance management to be strategic, that's the answer to that one. It becomes strategic if your main reason for having the performance management is to help employees to be more productive, to help them reach their goals, to help them hit their targets, do anything to support that. Okay, that is when your performance management becomes strategic. Of course, you need to have an understanding. Again, we'll go back to the 6A model. You need to have an assessment of what is really happening within your organization and what's really happening with your employees in order for you to come up with a performance management program that answers all of this, that really resonates to your employees and that really helps your managers be better managers of their team members. Ayan. Before anything else, I would just like to say thank you to Miss Lyrene. Lyrene, I hope she's a girl. I can see right now. But Miss Lyrene actually has been answering some of the questions in the comment section.
Yeah.
She's been giving her thoughts. So thank you, Miss very much, Miss Lyrene, for helping us with all of the questions. Another question is OKR different from MBO? And is it the same with KRI or key results indicators?
OKR as it is. So management by objective is the 1960s item that we shared in the video earlier. OKR as it is have a lot of similarities with your KPIs, KRAs, but the entirety of it, I highly suggest to get measure what matters. I mentioned it earlier because OKRs, aside from the goal setting system, it also has dialogue timing. It suggests when is the best time to discuss certain topics or with the manager and then the employee. So some items needed to be discussed, for example, shortly on a daily basis, every 10 days, every month, and so on. So we automated this system on the platform basically. So OKR goes beyond the alignment on the targets. It also encourages dialogue on certain frequency for the team manager and the team member.
And if you don't have an online platform, you can actually do this on your own. You just need to come up with the
Yes.
process that if ever the performance hits 30% and you're already at 80%, then this is what needs to happen. You just need to have all of this written in a black and white and make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, actually, Ms. Rona, before I built the company, I was doing this for 5 years already on an Excel sheet. So I was doing it on an Excel sheet every week, every day, updating the targets of my marketing team. Had over 30 people in the marketing team back then. So yeah, your
Well,
Excel sheet is a powerful tool.
some of the best ideas come from our pain points.
Yes.
It's always like that. Some of the best ideas always come from our pain point. If you want to improve something, that's when you're able to really come up with a good idea. Okay, so how often should we make targets?
For us, the company objective, of course, has to be something annual. The department targets usually for us is monthly. Individual targets are also monthly. However, as I said earlier, these has to be open for adjustments, right? Especially on the individual targets. The team manager and the team member has to be aligned that anytime if there are critical issues, for example, in tech, um, we set that we need to launch this app in the 20th of this month, for example. But if there's something arise, for example, Google changed their privacy policy, and this will take an additional 3 days to deploy. Obviously, you can't hit the 20th of the month. Targets has to be set on a monthly basis on our opinion. But the more important part for us is regardless how often you create your targets, it has to be open for adjustments.
Yes, correct. I agree. One of the mentors that I've had in HR, Sir Ed Ebrio, one of the things that we would always say is that there's no such thing as a specific targets, specific date for target setting, specific date for
Right.
feedback, for giving of feedback. As soon as you think that there is a need for it, do so.
Exactly.
So that also means that you need to be very flexible. Cheska is asking if she can apply the 6A model for personal performance management. What do you
Oh,
think, Jamie?
Jamie, go ahead.
Sure. I mean, it's just it is just a framework to implement performance management. So there's no reason that you cannot apply that to yourself for sure. I mean, yeah, everyone has. I think everyone actually should have their own personal
Yes.
performance management, right? Because you
Yeah.
know yourself. Yeah, you know best yourself. What are your things that you need to achieve that you want to achieve? So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. You should have, I think it's applicable. It doesn't have to be as part of your performance appraisal system, but just a way for you to manage your performance, see what are the areas that you need to improve on. I think you can apply that for personal use.
Yeah,
Has there been, sorry, go ahead.
I think, Ms. Rona, on the 6 A's, one thing that I would like to highlight is the last A, which is achieve. To really look at your achievements, celebrate, of course, every small wins. This is, I think, a Facebook concept where they believe that every small win needs to be celebrated. That's why we allow real-time recognition for 20%, 50% achievement of the employee. But more so, beyond the small wins and your monthly target is also to make sure that you're setting targets that are sustainable, that is contributing to your overall growth. I just spoke with our previous COO last Wednesday. We had a brunch, and they're creating a platform that aligns your personal pillars, like what are your core values as an individual, and basically overlapping it with your targets in the company and the competencies that the companies assign you, and how does that targets enable you to become and achieving your personal objectives. So yeah, all these frameworks, these concepts, if you know them by heart and how these things are done, it can be applied on many other things. Steve Jobs, as we all know, he said creativity is just really getting different patterns and being able to create something beautiful and powerful out of it. That's what creativity is. If there's one thing and defined for certain things, you can always apply it into something else that is relevant to you, to your team, or to your organization.
Okay. Dots is asking, has there been a change on performance management cycle when the pandemic started? I think I have to answer this one. Actually, there's not much change in the cycle. Depends on your company what your cycle is. If it's still something that's sustainable for your department, I think you can go ahead and still do the performance management cycle. the goal setting, the coaching, the giving of feedback, and the communicating of the assessment. The only thing that I would recommend is that, because some of your employees might be working from home, some of your employees might be working from someplace else. Um, don't take this in a linear approach, because sometimes we do the performance appraisal, the performance management cycle in a linear approach. We set the goals, we coach, we give feedback, we communicate. We have to keep in mind that the times are changing. So sometimes the goal setting happens, and then the coaching will happen. Alongside it is the giving of feedback, and alongside it, the communicating of the assessment can happen. And number two, number three, number four can happen all at the same time. And then somewhere along the way, you'll have to go back to number one to adjust your goals. So
Exactly.
let's not look at this as a linear approach. Let's make sure that we keep some flexibility, like what we have mentioned earlier, because this allows everyone to really help the employees improve their productivity, meet their goals, meet their targets. If we do this as a linear approach, then we lose the reason why we're doing the appraisal in the first place. It just becomes some sort of a process that we have to go through every now
Mm,
and then. Yeah. I This is not actually a question, but this is one of the things that caught my attention. John Austria mentioned that in our company, what is happening is actually stretch targets. Sometimes it's so stretched, it becomes frustrating. Yeah, I think it has something to do with setting up your stretch
mm,
goals and stretch targets. Sometimes, kasi, especially if the managers are the ones doing the stretch targets, the targets might not be humanly possible anymore.
mm,
It might be beyond the capacity of the employee. I think the best way to handle it is for the stretch target to be some sort of a compromise between the manager and the employee, not just the manager alone. What do you think?
For me, one of the headlines in Harvard Business Review, if I remember correctly, was why Yahoo failed. And one of the reasons is stretch targets. They changed CEOs, and their last CEO just laid out, oh,
Oh
this is
yeah.
stretch target, right? And I think Ms. Rona touched it a little bit on that one already, on setting stretch targets on right occasions for the organization. um, and the buy-in of the employee is has to be there, because no matter how big the target is, if the employee is like, "Mm, yeah, okay, target," you won't get there, right? Number two. Number three, what we do is also, you as HR, you know who are your high performers, high potentials, and so on. You profile your employees on a regular basis. This is an opportunity for you to give those high performers and a stretch target. For us, everybody has an additional target that is not necessarily their OKR. It's not one of the most important things they have to achieve. But if they hit 100% their OKR, they have another progress bar that's basically rewards them real time every time they achieve it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the ways that you can handle that. Pero I agree. I agree with what you mentioned about it being about it having the buy-in of the employee
Mhm.
themselves, because the employees would be the one to hit those targets. Eh. If
Exactly.
they are not in line with what your or if your expectation is not the same as what they had in mind, then mahirap talaga to achieve those stretch targets. What is your suggestion for those who are in the middle management to have initiated implementing a performance management on the department but don't have buy-ins of upper management? So I think there's a disconnect between the expectation of the upper management as far as performance management is concerned and what the middle management is actually doing. How can they get the buy-in of the top management?
Um, I think the best way to answer is, I don't know where the conversation is at this stage, but if the management said we have to do this way, we still have to follow the management. All right. But if you want to try, where if you're the stage of the conversation is you trying to influence the management that, hey, this is a better way of doing performance management, or this is effective in our team. Number one, the power of internal communication, your influence in internal communication. If the senior management sees that what you do in the team is actually effective, then there's no reason for them to say no to that. Number two, how do you measure that it's effective? You need to set the right targets. For us, for example, because it's so new concept, like real-time performance management, right? Nobody does that before. Real-time recognition, real-time, everything real-time. Even bonus is real-time. You don't have to wait for the end of the month because it's transferred to your bank account right away. What we do is, as what Jamie mentioned earlier, you get a cohort. Say, let's try it with one outlet, or let's try it with one team. We set the target. What are the targets that we set? A, participation rate. How many of your team members actually participated in that program? Like, are they actively setting their targets on a daily basis? Number one. Number two, of course, the achievement of the target. How many percent of the target was achieved using that new way of performance management? Number three, feedback. What were the feedback of your this is more of the qualitative part on your one-on-ones, or your dialogue with the employee. How was your experience with this new performance management systems? So again, going back to the 2 points, the first point is the power of your internal communications influence. If the management sees that what you do works, there's no reason for them to say no to it. They're probably the ones who are going to amplify that and just implement it right away. Number two, set the right metrics on measuring the effectiveness of your new performance management systems.
And on my end, I think one of the things that I can recommend is to make sure that you know your numbers.
Yes.
Keep in mind that your top management doesn't deal with all of the daily operations and things like that. What they are more concerned about is how the organization is growing, the bottom line, the expenses, the profit, P&L. Which is why in the earlier webinar that I've had, one of the things that I mentioned is that we need to develop our business acumen. As an HR, you need to have that business acumen, because this is where it comes in handy. If you can relate your whatever management system that you want to put in place, if you can relate that to your bottom line, to the P&L, to the effect, the overall effect on the financial status of the company, if you can relate it to that, then the top management would be willing to listen to you. But of course, like what Paul has mentioned, the first thing is very important, the internal communication. You need to be able to build your integrity within the top management. Because if you cannot build that, if they cannot see your strength as an HR person, then they will have a hard time listening to you. Okay, so that's very, very important. The number one, and then know your numbers. Know how it impacts the operations of the company. That's what I can that's what I would want to say on that topic. And then lastly, last question na po ito before we actually have a contest. So let's have this as the last question para we can proceed to the contest. What are the usual key results or targets that you can suggest for support teams, such as learning and development?
Jimmy.
All right, so right, so think about what is learning and development for, right? So you want to increase your employees' skills, right? But for what reason? Maybe it is to increase revenue, right? Maybe it's to have bigger customer satisfaction. So yeah, you can zoom in on these effects of L&D in employees, right? And see, are they actually applying the learnings that you are giving them, right? Is your L&D program having a measurable effect on the employees, right? So that's one. Secondly, also you can measure, the trainings that I have. Are my team members, are my employees actually engaging with that, right? So if you're using an LMS for your training, right? How much of that are they actually watching? So you can measure these kind of things. We do it in Move Up, actually. We measure how many minutes are they watching, how long do they spend on the videos, are they passing the quizzes. So you can measure it in that way as well.
Okay, yes, I agree. And gusto ko yung, I'd like to highlight the first part of what Jamie mentioned. What is the department for? What is the learning and development department for? What are you expecting from that? Because that would give you an insight on what you can use as your KRAs or KPIs for the team members belonging to that department. You need to have an understanding of what's expected from the department, and then you can break it down among the team members and the things that they are responsible for. Ayan. So I think we have addressed all of the questions. If I missed any of your questions, I'm so sorry, but we'll try to have it answered. If you come up with questions later on, you can still email us. We'll still answer those questions that you might have. Email us at support@readyrightnow.com. But we are now going over time. We promise that we're going to have a contest right now. So, Jamie, would you do the honors of
Sure.
handling the contest?
Sure. So just to remind everybody, we have two prizes on offer. The first one is a corporate subscription for Move Up for your company. All right. This means you can use Move Up for your training and development program for up to 20 employees for 1 year. This is valued US dollar 1,000. Right. Our second prize is our free access on Move Up to our masterclass or our masterclass series, right? So these are high production level training videos created in collaboration with coaches and trainers that we produce here in Ho Chi Minh City with our production team. So the way this works, folks, is get ready to write your comments. Paul is going to ask you a question, right, for each prize. And then the first person to comment the correct answer, you will win the prize, right? And I think Miss Rona, you can flash up the winner on the screen, right?
Yeah.
Miss Rona, FYI, there's still more than 300 people simultaneously watching us.
Yes. Yes. Actually, from our page and from the Facebook group that we currently have about 360 people watching us right now. And the comment section is still blowing up. So ayan po.
All right. So again, if you guys are ready, just get ready to comment the answer. The answers is maximum 2 words. Sorry, yeah, 2 words. I think Ms. Rona, we're ready, no?
Yes po, we're ready.
All right. So the first question, if you answer this correctly, as Jamie mentioned, you have $1,000. That's 50,000 pesos worth of subscription to 1 year subscription for your company on MoveUp. The question is,
Drum roll.
what is the name? What is the name of the app for learning and development that we created?
Ayan, let's wait for them. Ang dami pa nagsasabi ng thank you, Uprush.
Yes,
So, again. So the first question is, what is the name of the app, the learning and development app, correct? That Jamie and Paul.
Oh,
Okay, we have a winner. Wait. Sinong nauna?
Oh my
Wait. Ito ang nauna. Baka magkamali ako. Sandali, ang bilis. Wait. Okay, ayun. Sorry, ang bilis kasi nung pag-akyat ng ano. We have Miss Anne Mary.
Okay.
Okay, siya po yung pinakamabilis na mag-comment. Ayan, Diyos ko, kinabahan ako.
We have one answer from Mr. Yong Estrada saying Up app. Up is our performance management app. However, our L&D app is Move Up.
So those are two different apps po. Up app is for the performance management again, and Move Up is for the learning and development. It actually makes use of micro learning. So if you're the kind of person na you cannot sit through a class for, let's say, a whole 8 hours, and you can only sabay turo si Jamie. If you can only take on bits and pieces every now and then, this app is a very good app for you. You will learn a lot from this. There are a lot of topics uploaded on this app. Congratulations to Miss Anne Mary. Please send us your email address via PM so that we can send you the details. We can get you or hook you up with Jamie and Paul on how you can get your prize. So
All right.
that's Miss Anne Marie. And I think we also have a second question pa.
Yes. So I always lose in contests. So every time I give away prizes, I make sure I give away two. So there's another chance for those who didn't get the first question correctly. All right. Our first. So the second question is, which city are we located now? Its previous name is Saigon. Let's wait for
Oo.
the
Guys, sorry po. Anne-Mary po yung nauna based on our records. Hindi po si Janelle. I'm so sorry. Hindi po si Janelle. On our records po, ang pinaka nauna natin, Diyos ko po, ang haba na nung kagad. Wait lang po. Wait lang po. Okay, pinakaunang pumasok is yung kay Anne-Mary. Halos magkasabay lang sila pero si Anne-Mary po yung nauna. Okay, for the next question po, ang pinakauna nating pumasok ay
Miss Flay Raut.
Yes! Ay, congratulations, Brenda. Brenda is actually one of our regulars sa ating mga webinars.
Oh.
Paid and free webinars. Brenda's always been there. So, iyan po, ang pinakatamang pong sagot ay kay Brenda. Siya po yung pinakaunang pumasok po. So, yan. Brenda, congratulations. The correct answer is Ho Chi Minh. We are accepting wrong spelling dahil po mabilisan po
Yes.
ito. Mabilisan pong type ito, so we are accepting wrong spelling. Ho Chi Minh, lag pa nga. Oo, sorry po sa mga naglalag. I am so sorry. Congratulations, Brenda. Please PM us your email address and we'll hook you up with Paul and Jamie so that you can get your prize po. Congratulations to Anne-Marie and to Brenda. And I think that's about it for today. Before we end our session po, okay, wag pong kalimutang i-send po. Wrong spelling, wrong. Hindi pa, ayan po natin yung spelling. Mabilisan eh. Pagbigyan na ang wrong spelling. Mabilisan. Ang bilis talagang nakaabang sila. So, before we end our session for today, we would just like to invite everyone to like our page if you haven't done so that you'll get notified whenever we have live webinars and if ever we have new webinars that we are offering. So this is the QR code for our Facebook page. You can also head to the link indicated here if you would like to visit our page. Aside from that, we would also like to invite everyone to join our labor relations and labor cases paid webinar happening on September 12, 2020. You can scan the QR code shown on your screen right now or head to the link indicated in this presentation. You can also head to our events page in order for you to reserve a slot. Confirmation of reservation happens upon presentation of your proof of payment. We're also we started also with our Afford the Train. Afford the Train is our affordable training sessions for non-HR related topics. The topic that we have on September 15 is brushing up on your communication skills. You can attend the training for as low as 168 pesos. Ayan po. At ang pinakahihintay ng lahat, if you would like to ask for your certificate of attendance, please click on or scan this QR code. This will lead you to the request form which you have to fill out in order for you to get a copy of your certificate of attendance, a copy of the slides, and a copy of the video. Ayan po. So, kunan nyo lang po ito ng picture. We would also be flashing or we would also be including in the comment section later on the link to the form in case you're unable to scan the QR code. And for everyone, pinakamaraming tumagal. This is actually one of those moments that we started with about 400 to 500 viewers, and until now, I am still seeing 400 to 500 viewers. It was a very, very informative webinar, and I thank all of the viewers that we have right now because they're very interactive. They've been commenting. They joined the contest. They answered all of the questions. And I am so happy that everyone is saying that they have learned something from the webinar today. So again, thank you very much po. And thank you very much to our two speakers today for giving us their time, Jamie and Paul. We'll still see each other on Tuesday, but right now I would like to thank you for really giving your time, 2 hours, 2.5 hours actually, of your time to Uprush and for helping us facilitate, helping us get the HR professionals and HR folks updated on how they can handle performance management using tools and technologies. I know that some of the questions are no longer touching on tools and technologies, but thank you for gamely answering all of those questions for us. Thanks a lot po, everyone. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And if ever you have any questions, just email us support at readyrightnow.com. We'll see you again next Saturday. We'll have a different speaker for next Saturday, and I'm also excited for that speaker. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great day, everyone. Bye po. Bye, everyone. Thank you.